from Ripple Training. So today is a pretty big day. Final Cut Pro has come to the iPad. So you can now create content, edit, and deliver projects on this single device, no matter where you are or where you go. Before we dive into it in detail, I want to tell you 3 things about it. Number 1, it's awesome. It's fully packed with all the professional features that you're used to in Final Cut Pro. By the way, you will need an M1 iPad or greater running at least iPad OS 16.4. Number 2, it's a subscription. While the update to Final Cut Pro on the Mac that came out today is free, as all updates on Final Cut Pro for Mac have been, Final Cut Pro for iPad is a subscription basis. It costs $4.99 per month or $49.99 per year. Either way, you get a free month to check it out. We think it's a no-brainer. Number 3, it's different. Although the interface looks very similar to what you're used to in Final Cut Pro on the Mac, because it's fully functional as a touch-only interface, even very experienced Final Cut Pro editors are going to need some guidance to be able to get started with it. And being Ripple Training, we've got you covered. In fact, our training is accessible directly in the app. Simply click the More button at the top right and select Video Tutorials. You'll be taken straight to our Ripple player, which contains 19 introductory lessons. The first 9 lessons and the last lesson are unlocked and free to watch, and will give you a solid grounding in how to use the app. If you like what you see, you can unlock the rest of these lessons at the introductory price of $19. And if you do so, you'll get all lessons that we add to this tutorial, more on that in a bit, completely free. Okay, so maybe you're not watching this right now on an iPad, or maybe your iPad's not compatible, you haven't chosen to subscribe yet. No worries. We're going to show you all the free lessons right here, right now. Let's dive in.
After launching Final Cut Pro for iPad and tapping Continue, you select a subscription option, either of which includes a free month. Then you can either start editing with a demo project or skip this step. Since you can do this step later, I'll tap Not Now, which brings us to the project screen where you view and manage your projects. If you didn't download the demo project on the last screen, you can download it now by tapping the More button, then tapping Download Demo Project, or tap the cloud icon. Once the project has downloaded, a preview appears, including information on its contents, size, duration, resolution, and more. You can also play the project here by tapping the Play button. Let's tap the Edit button to open the project. The Edit screen is your main work area in Final Cut Pro for iPad. By default, it displays 3 areas: the viewer at the top left, the browser at the top right, and the timeline underneath. You can resize these areas by dragging the resize handles above the timeline and at the top left of the browser. Tap the More button at the top right to access the Final Cut Pro user guide, video tutorials like this one, support, and to send feedback. Tap again to close. Okay, let's play this completed project.
I don't remember the last time I got to celebrate Lunar New Year in the Bay, but I'm glad I'm finally home. Lunar New Year symbolizes the beginning of a new year and represents the desires for a new life. It's a time to reflect and celebrate a year of your hard work.
Great. I'll swipe right to see the beginning of the timeline and tap in the ruler to move the playhead to the start of the project. In the following lessons, we'll learn how to use Final Cut Pro for iPad by building parts of this project ourselves. Let's get started. I'll return to the project screen by tapping the back button. Let's create a new project by tapping the Add button here. I'll tap the project name field, delete the current name, and type Practice. Then I'll tap Done. The default timeline setting of Automatic will base the settings on the orientation, resolution, and frame rate of the first clip we add. Let's choose Custom to see our options. Since our media was shot in 4K, let's choose that for resolution. The orientation is correct, but if you want to create a vertical video, you can choose Portrait. For color space, since our clips were shot on the iPhone in HDR, we'll leave it as is, but you can also choose SDR here. Our iPhone clips were shot in a mix of frame rates. Let's choose 30p so we have the option of playing higher frame rate clips smoothly in slow motion. That's all we need to do to set up our project. I'll tap Continue. In this screen, you choose a location from which to import your media. You can import from the Photos app or from Files. You can shoot video with the built-in camera, or you can start with a blank project. The iPhone video clips I want to use are located in an album in my Photos library on my Mac. Since I have iCloud Photos enabled, they'll be available here on my iPad. I'll tap Import from Photos. I'll tap the Lunar New Year album, swipe across and down to select all the clips, and tap Add. These video clips now appear in the browser. Next, I've used AirDrop to transfer several audio files, including voiceover, music, and sound effects, to the Files app on my iPad. So let's import those as well. At the top of the screen, I'll tap the Import button and tap Files. Note that you can also import files stored in iCloud Drive. And now our audio files also appear in the browser. We do need one more shot, however, and for that we can use the camera in Final Cut Pro for iPad to get it. You can use the camera in Final Cut Pro for iPad to shoot a video clip and add it directly to your project. Tap the camera button at the top of the screen. If needed, grant Final Cut Pro for iPad access to the camera and microphone, as well as location access. Before shooting, you can select a resolution by tapping here in the upper left. I'll select 4K to match our other clips, and a frame rate by tapping here. You can also access these and other settings by tapping on the Settings button at the bottom left. On iPad Pros with M2 chips, you can enable the camera control to choose to shoot in ProRes up to 30p by tapping here. In Tools, I'll enable the grid, and in Audio, you can choose a connected audio input. I'll tap the X to close the Settings window. I'll tap the ProRes camera control to enable it. Now I'll record the scene. And I'll switch to the wide-angle camera and shoot again. The number of recordings appears at the top right. I'll tap Done. And our new recordings appear in the browser. With all our media imported, we can now organize it for our edit. With our media imported, we can now review it to identify parts to use in our edit. Final Cut Pro for iPad includes robust tools for filtering, sorting, and rating your media. Before we get started, let's use the resize handle to hide the timeline so we have more screen real estate for the viewer and browser. Next, I'll tap the Filter button. And for media types, I'll tap Videos so that we aren't distracted by the audio files. I'll tap outside the window to close it. Now, I'll tap the Clip Appearance button. Here, we can change the thumbnail to aspect ratio to see the full thumbnail, or square to fill the space. We can show our clip names. I'll turn that off. And we can sort our clips. I'll choose Duration and then Descending so that the longest clips are first. I'll tap this first clip of the Golden Gate Bridge to select it. It loads into the viewer and appears at the bottom of the browser as a film strip. If this collapsed jog wheel is in the way, just drag it up. We'll learn to use it a bit later. To preview the clip, tap the play button under the viewer. Tap again to pause. Or you can scrub through the clip by swiping across the film strip. Near the end of the clip, we can see the inside of the helicopter. I'll drag the handle on the right edge of the film strip and watch the viewer to trim the clip to end before that point. If you want to reset the handle to the end of the clip, simply double tap in the darkened region outside the selection range. I'll drag that back again. We can also trim the head of the clip to start a little later. This time, I'll scrub to where I want the clip to start, and then tap the Trim Start button. I like this trim shot, so I'll tap the Favorite button to rate it as a favorite. The green bar that appears in both the film strip and the thumbnail indicates the favorite status for this clip range. I'll also add a few keywords to this favorited range to make it easy to locate later. I'll tap the Keywords button, tap Add New Keyword, type Bridge, tap Return, tap Add, type Aerial, tap Return, and tap the X to close the keywords list. The blue line on the clip indicates that there's at least one keyword assigned to this same range. Let's select this next shot and scrub it. It's a time lapse of the Bay Bridge. There's some camera movement at the very start, so let's get rid of it by scrubbing just past that point, tapping the Trim End button to trim the clip to just the part we want to get rid of, and then tap the Reject button. The red line indicates the portion of the clip that has been rejected. I'll double tap to the right to reset the endpoint handle. Now, I'll tap the Filter button and choose Hide Rejected. And that range of the clip is no longer included. Let's add the keyword Bridge to this shot. I won't include Aerial since it was shot from the ground. Let's select one more bridge shot. This is an aerial of the Bay Bridge, and I like the entire shot, so I'll favorite it. This time by touching and holding the thumbnail, then tapping Favorite. I'll also add our two keywords to it. Now, I'd like to add a keyword to identify all the shots of Chinatown. Rather than doing this individually, I'll tap Select, drag across all the Chinatown clips, and deselect this clip. Then I'll tap the pencil button, tap Keyword, and add Chinatown. And tap Done. I'll review the 2 takes that I shot with the Final Cut Pro for iPad camera. This one's fine, so I don't need the other one, so I'll reject it. By first favoriting, rejecting, and adding keywords to entire clips or clip ranges, you'll be able to quickly locate shots while building your edit, which we'll do next. The magnetic timeline in Final Cut Pro for iPad makes it easy to build your story. Since we closed it to create more room for reviewing and tagging our clips, I'll use the resize handle to open it. I'd like to start this project with a bridge shot, so I'll tap the Filter button, tap Keywords, and select Bridge to see all my bridge shots. I'll select this one of the couple in front of the Golden Gate. I'll play it and trim the end back a bit. To add a clip to the timeline, you can drag the film strip into the gray band and release, and just the selected range gets added. I'll tap the Undo button to undo that. If you drag any thumbnail, selected or not, to the timeline, then the entire clip gets added. I'll undo that. Or you can tap Append under the browser to add the selected range. In each case, the magnetic timeline snaps the clip to the start of the project in the primary storyline, which is the main sequence of clips in the project. Next, I'll add a series of Chinatown clips. I'll filter by Chinatown, and also filter by favorites, so I now only see Chinatown clips that I know I want to use. When I select a clip, only the favorited range is selected in the film strip. I'll tap Append to add this clip to the end of my project, and I'll append a few more shots. I'll zoom into the timeline by pinching open and scrub through these clips. I'd like to add this shot of the cat figure before the pageant winners. So I'll snap the playhead to the start of that clip, select the cat clip, then I'll tap the down arrow next to append, select Insert at Playhead, and tap Insert. You can also insert clips by dragging. I'll drag this clip from the browser between the last two clips in the timeline. Another type of edit is the Connect edit. The Connect edit places the clip from the browser on top of clips in the primary storyline. It's particularly useful when the primary storyline contains interview clips so that the connected clip above can serve as a cutaway to the material being discussed, typically called B-roll. In this case, we don't see our speaker, so all of our B-roll is in the primary storyline. However, connected clips can still come in handy when you want to keep your current audio and replace just the video portion of a clip. For example, I like the audio with this clip. However, I prefer this shot in the browser for the visual. But it doesn't have any audio. By the way, these clips are not part of your project download. In this case, we can use a Connect edit. I can either drag on top of the timeline clip, or to be more precise, I'll undo that. And with a playhead at the start of the timeline clip, I'll tap Connect. The clip is placed on top of the existing clip, and since it has no audio, we see the top clip and hear the clip underneath. If the connected clip did have audio, you'll learn how to remove it a bit later. And we'll trim this connected clip to the correct duration in the next lesson. Connect edits are also useful for adding audio to your project. I'll add the voiceover audio that tells the story represented by these shots. So I'll filter by audio only. Then I'll show clip names so I can identify the voiceover clips in the order they were recorded. I'll tap voiceover 1 to select it and play it.
I don't remember the last time I got to celebrate Lunar New Year in the Bay, but I'm glad I'm finally home.
Now in the timeline, I'll scrub the playhead to a little after the start of the first clip where I want the voiceover to start. Since I want the audio to start here, I'll tap Connect to connect it at the playhead. Audio clips get placed beneath video clips. To see all the clips, I'll tap Options to open timeline options, then tap Appearance and adjust the clip height. And tap Done. By filtering in the browser and using Append, Insert, and Connect edits, you can quickly build a rough edit of your story. The next step is to fine-tune your edit by working directly in the timeline. Final Cut Pro for iPad includes several options for manipulating clips in the timeline, and the magnetic timeline makes it quick and easy to reorganize and trim your clips. At the top left of the timeline is the Selection Mode button, which indicates the default clip selection mode. In this mode, tapping any clips selects the entire clip. You can then drag the clip to move it between any other clips. Or you can drag it above a clip to make it a connected clip. I'll undo that. If you decide you don't want to include the clip, tap the trash can. I'll undo that as well. By touching and holding in an empty area of the timeline and then dragging, you can select multiple clips and then move them all to a different location, including connected clips. I'll undo that. If you tap the check mark under the timeline, you can then select multiple non-adjacent clips and drag them to an edit point where they're all collected together. I'll tap Done. You can also trim timeline clips in clip selection mode. I'll pinch open to zoom in on this clip. Tapping the left edge selects the start point. Drag it to trim. Notice how the first frame updates in the viewer. I'll have it start after the parked car is out of the frame. Tapping the right edge selects the end point. I'll trim that back to just before we see the light pole. Or I'll select this connected clip. If you move the playhead to the frame you want the clip to start or end on, you can then tap the Trim Start or Trim End buttons below the timeline. I'll trim the end to match the clip it's connected to. It also works to extend a clip if there's more media available. The advantage of dragging the endpoint is that it reveals additional media that you may want to include. So, in clip selection mode, we can quickly reorganize the order of the clips in the timeline and fine-tune the edit points. Before we explore the next selection mode, let's change the screen layout to focus on the timeline. We don't need to see the browser right now, so one option is to tap the Project Media button to close it. We can also tap the Viewer options at the bottom right of the viewer and then tap Picture-in-Picture. This view creates a large timeline window and a floating window for the viewer, which you can reposition to any corner. Okay, let's switch to Range Selection mode. Range Selection mode lets you drag to set a range within a clip or across multiple clips. On this hyperlapse shot of City Hall, I'd like to remove the middle section, so I'll drag out an initial range, and then I'll adjust the start and end points by dragging the edges, adjust the position of the entire range by dragging in the middle, and then tap Delete. And that range of the clip has been removed. You can also drag a range over multiple clips to trim the first and last clip and delete all the clips in between. I'll undo that. With Edge Selection mode, tapping between two clips selects both their edit points so that you can roll that edit point backwards or forwards without changing the total duration of the two shots. With the playhead positioned where I want to trim this clip and extend the next clip, I can drag to snap the edit point to the playhead, or tap the Trim to Playhead button below the timeline. By tapping to either side of the edit point, you can select just the outgoing edit point or just the incoming edit point to trim each clip individually by dragging or using the Trim button to trim to the playhead. By using these edit modes to change our clip ordering and adjust the edit points, we've been able to make our story arc clearer and our edits work more seamlessly. Next, we can fine-tune our edit. The Jog Wheel in Final Cut Pro for iPad lets you make precise edits in both the browser and the timeline. First, I'll tap View Options and exit Picture-in-Picture, and I'll return to Clip mode. By default, the Jog Wheel is collapsed and positioned at the right edge of the timeline. You can turn it off and on by tapping this button in the top toolbar. To expand and collapse the Jog Wheel, tap the button in the middle. When the Jog Wheel is collapsed, you can reposition it anywhere on the left and right edges of the screen. I'll open the browser, select this dragging clip that we've worked with before, and tap the Jog Wheel to expand it. By dragging the wheel, I can precisely select the best frame for my start point. Then I'll tap Trim Start in the Jog Wheel to set the start point on that frame. I'll repeat for my end point, locating my desired last frame by dragging the wheel, then tapping Trim End in the Jog Wheel. And once again, I'll add it over this musician clip as a connect edit. You can also use the Jog Wheel to trim clips in the timeline. I'll place the playhead over this clip of the pageant winners and tap to select the clip. I can use the Jog Wheel to select a new start point, then tap the Trim Start button to trim to that frame. To adjust the end point, I'll use a different method. First, I'll tap to select the end point. By default, the Jog Wheel moves the playhead. But if I tap the double arrows, I can then nudge the selected edit point. The viewer shows the new endpoint. Notice it doesn't matter where the playhead is. You can also use the Jog Wheel to move clips in the timeline. I'll select this connected clip of the dragon. When the full clip is selected, instead of a start or edit point, you can nudge the position of the entire clip. In the viewer, we see the frame on the primary storyline immediately before the connected clip starts. I'll nudge the connected clip so it begins here. Whenever you need frame-precise edits, the jog wheel is just a tap away. Next, we'll explore some special controls for manipulating your edit. Tapping options at the top right of the timeline reveals controls for turning on snapping and position in the Behaviors tab. Let's turn on Show Controls in Timeline so that we can access these functions directly with these two buttons. The first one, snapping, is on by default, as indicated by the purple color. Notice how the playhead snaps to edit points as you drag it. This behavior makes it easy to position the playhead on an edit point in order to perform an insert edit between clips, or to connect a clip at the exact start of a clip underneath. It can, however, make it more difficult to position the playhead on a frame close to an edit point. But if you turn off snapping, you can easily move it close to an edit point to trim. Personally, I prefer to keep snapping enabled and instead use the jog wheel if I need to move the playhead close to an edit point without snapping to it. The other timeline control is position. When position is on, clips will remain in their current timeline positions while you're making edits. For example, let's say I don't want to use this clip, but I also don't want to change the overall duration of my project. With the clip selected, if I tap the delete button, instead of the clips to the right moving over to fill the gap, a new gap clip gets created so that all the clips remain in their original positions and the project duration remains the same. Or let's say I'd like this clip to be shorter, but again, I don't want to change the overall duration of my project. If I trim the clip's endpoint to the left, all other clips remain in their current positions and a new gap clip fills the space that gets created. If I now drag a clip from the browser to the edit point before the gap clip and snap to the playhead, that portion of the gap clip gets overwritten and the overall timing of the project remains unchanged. And then I'll trim the endpoint to the start of the next clip. Since positioning is still on, this action overwrites the remaining portion of the gap clip. Let's say I want to add some time to my project just before these last 3 clips. I'll tap the select button, then tap each of the 3 clips. Dragging any one of them to the right drags them all, creating a gap to fill the space. This gap clip can serve as a placeholder until you decide on a clip to replace it. I'll tap Done. Once you turn off position, gap clips can be edited like any other clip. You can trim start and end points, perform a roll edit with neighboring clips, split them, and move them between other clips. In the next lesson, we'll work with audio. Let's learn how to work with audio in Final Cut Pro for iPad as we add sound effects and music to our project. In the browser, let's filter by the keywords SFX and music that I added on my own. The yin and yang clip is the music. Let's preview some of it. I'd like to start hearing the music before we see the opening shot, so I'll insert a gap clip at the beginning of the project by turning on position, tapping a clip, tapping select, then select all, and dragging any clip to the right to move them all. Doing so inserts a gap clip at the start of the project. I'll tap Done and turn off position. With the playhead at the start of the project, I'll select the yin and yang music clip, select the Connect Edit type, and tap Connect. I'll also connect this Night Winds sound effect to the start of the project. In order to see all our connected clips, I'll tap Options to open the Timeline View options, and in the Appearance tab, adjust the clip height. And I'll adjust the timeline window size by dragging the resize handle. Then I'll move the sound effect clip above the music clip. The music clip is too long. I'll position the playhead right before these bridge shots, tap the music clip to select it, and tap Trim End. Then I'll pinch drag to zoom in close, and with the end point selected, expand the jog wheel and set it to nudge to trim the end point to end right after one of the percussive hits. I'll collapse the jog wheel and play that section back. Let's now move the playhead close to the end of the last voiceover clip and connect the whoosh hit sound effect just after the start of this series of Chinatown clips. Here, I've placed all the sound effects clips so we can work on adjusting audio levels. Currently, the voiceover, sound effects, and music are all at their default volume levels. At the bottom left of the timeline, I'll tap Volume to turn on Audio View. Turning on Audio View reveals a level control on the left, audio meters on the right, and a keyframe selection mode in the Selection Mode menu. Let's play some of the project.
I don't remember the last time I got to celebrate Lunar New Year in the Bay.
The audio clips compete with each other, and the meters indicate the overall level is too high, even clipping at some points where they turn red. Let's zoom in closer to the start of the project. First, we don't need the audio on these primary storyline clips, so I'll select each and drag the level slider all the way down. To adjust the level on multiple clips at the same time, drag select the clips and adjust the level. Let's bring down the level of this first sound effect a bit.
I don't remember the last time I got to celebrate.
For the music, the default level is good except for when the voiceover is playing. We can lower the level of a range of a clip by selecting the range mode and dragging a range in the music clip that starts a little before and ends a little after the voiceover clip. Now when I drag down the level, it only affects that range, and keyframes are automatically added to dip the level down and back up again. I'll return to keyframe mode.
I don't remember the last time I got to celebrate Lunar New Year in the Bay, but I'm glad I'm finally home.
If you want to come back and adjust it again later, while in Audio View and Keyframe Select mode, position the playhead over the lowered range, just that range will turn yellow, and drag the slider to adjust it. To change the timing of the keyframes, select the range mode, drag a range to include the keyframes you want to move, expand the jog wheel, tap the double arrows to switch to nudge mode, and jog to move them earlier or later. The mix is much better now, but there's some noise in this first voiceover clip. To hear it more clearly, I'll drag select the Night Winds and Yin and Yang clips and temporarily reduce the volume all the way. Now I'll play the first voiceover clip.
I don't remember the last time I got to celebrate Lunar New Year in the Bay, but I'm glad I'm finally home.
There's some background noise, particularly at the start.
I don't remember the last time I got to celebrate.
I'll select it and then tap the inspector button. Here, you can change clip speed and choose to retain the same audio pitch, offset the overall volume level, pan audio left and right, add fades, enhance your audio, and add effects. Let's turn on voice isolation for this selected clip. And let's play that back.
I don't remember the last time I got to celebrate Lunar New Year in the Bay. I don't remember the last time I got to celebrate Lunar New Year in the Bay.
Much better. I'll select the audio clips underneath it and bring their volume levels back up. You can also assign audio roles to your clips. With the Night Wind sound effect selected, I'll tap the eye, tap Audio Roll, and select Effects. Notice how the clip changes color and moves below the dialog roles. I'll tap the music clip and assign it a music role. It changes color and moves below the other clips. With the audio tools in Final Cut Pro for iPad, you can quickly polish your audio to make your project sound great. There's one more very useful audio feature that we'll look at next. Once your project is complete, it's easy to share with others. To get started, tap the Share button at the top of the screen. Here, you can choose to share your video, just the audio, or the frame under the playhead. You can even share the project itself so that someone else can work on it, on another iPad or on a Mac. In our case, we'll share our video. Here, you can choose to exclude the audio, choose a preset, which will then populate the fields below. I'll select Default, and you can modify the preset here by choosing from a range of codecs all the way up to ProRes 4444XQ, a resolution, a file type, and a color space. Since we're working with HDR clips in this project, I'll select the HDR color space, which will make our project look its best on other Apple devices and platforms that support it. I'll tap Export. After the video is rendered, choose how you want to share it, including AirDrop, text, email, sharing to Final Cut Pro on the Mac, social platforms, or saving the video locally to the Photos app, Files, or other locations. Congratulations, you've created your first project in Final Cut Pro for iPad. Now, try using Final Cut Pro for iPad to tell your own story.
As you can see, these free lessons should get you well on your way to working with Final Cut Pro for iPad. But there's a lot more. If you unlock the rest of the lessons, here's what else you'll learn.
Work with auto-conforming soundtracks. Make color adjustments. Add effects. Automatically replace backgrounds. Change clip speed. Transform clips. Automatically reframe clips. Animate with keyframes. Add titles and transitions. And even use the cool new live drawing feature.
There are more features for Final Cut Pro for iPad, and we're going to be adding lessons to this very same tutorial covering those features over the coming weeks. For example, multicam editing, working with Magic Keyboard and Apple Pencil, working with audio components and applying audio effects, using video scopes, working with log footage and lookup tables, masking and keying using blend modes, editing cinematic videos, creating different timeline versions. Now here's the cool part. If you unlock the tutorial at the current introductory pricing, you will get all those additional lessons that we'll be adding over the coming weeks for free. As we add them, they'll automatically appear in your player. As you can see at Ripple Training, we're super excited about Final Cut Pro for iPad, but we want to know what you think, so leave us a comment below. Let's have a discussion about it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, click the bell. You'll get notified when we have new content coming out. Really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and we'll see you soon.